This video contains spoilers for Thankyou Ghoul, so if you haven't read it, then I recommend doing so before you watch this video. Anyway, enjoy the video. I have a Thankyou Ghoul phase every winter. It used to be that I would go and watch the anime over and over again, but ever since I got my hands on all of the manga, oh my god, this is so heavy, I haven't gone back and watched the anime, except from listening to the banger openings that we have.
Why is this shit so big?
But other than that, the reason I never went back to the anime is because even though it has added scenes like Jason and Haise having a fight in the first episode, it doesn't actually follow the manga. And therefore, for me, it's not as good of a story. But before I get into why I think the manga is better and a must read, first I'll break down what Thankyou Ghoul is. Thankyou Ghoul is written and illustrated by the goat Sui Ishida. It's set in Tokyo where not only do humans live, but also ghouls live. Ghouls are flesh-eating monsters which have to feed on humans to survive, with the only other thing they can consume being coffee. Don't ask me why, I don't know, it's just used to show the similarities between humans and ghouls. The series has a blend of psychological horror mixed with the themes of regret and guilt, shown through the eyes of Ken Kaneki, a human who was turned into a ghoul due to an accident that he had where steel pipes fell on him, causing him to have ghoul organs transplanted into him. Our main character, Ken Kaneki, starts off as shy and timid, but after he has the accident, like I said, he turns into a ghoul. And this is where we start to see the world through his eyes. Somebody who was once a human, living as a ghoul, realizing that they're not that bad. They're just trying to live their lives as well. This doesn't mean he instantly accepts becoming a ghoul, because for the first few volumes we see he's struggling to come to terms with the fact he has to eat what was his own kind, which eventually leads him to become a cannibal, where he will eat humans, and eventually down the line, ghouls, but we don't have to talk about that, that's just water under the bridge. Kaneki has to go through this world he is now a part of, whilst being somebody who used to live in the human world, therefore making him the only person who can bridge the gap between humans and ghouls, which ends up being the actual goal of the story. As the story progresses, Kaneki goes from being, like I said, a weak, timid person to somebody who is feared on the level of the triple S-rated one-eyed owl, who is who the CCG, the police against ghouls, are very, very scared of since they weren't even able to defeat it with their strongest men. This doesn't mean he gets this power without effort though, because Kaneki goes through a lot of hardships, most notably his torture at the hand of the ghoul, Jason, also known as Yamori, if you want to know that part. Jason put an entire centipede into Kaneki's ear, whilst ripping off his limbs, whilst also making Kaneki count back in sevens from 1,000 so that he would stay sane. And this, in turn, caused Kaneki's demeanor to completely shift. Kaneki, in this moment, where his demeanor shifts, he accepts he's a ghoul, and he mutilates his own face because he's distraught. He can't feel pain anymore because the amount of pain he's gone through. And then he decides to, well, cannibalize Jason. Now, I want to show this moment in the anime so I can represent how the anime fails to show the emotion and just raw messages that the series conveys throughout the entirety of the manga. This scene starts off relatively the same, with Kaneki hallucinating Haise, who is the person whose organs are inside of him. He also has to count back in sevens to keep sane. He also has to choose between two people as who he wants to live. However, instead of it being a mother and son, like in the manga, it's two lovers because we didn't meet them in the anime. But that's neither here nor there, it's a minor change. The part I want to focus on is the part where Kaneki says, I am a ghoul. Because in the manga, like I said, he mutilates his own face in this horrible to look at drawing. But in the anime, he has a cool, calm and collected demeanor whilst he says the words, I am a ghoul, and his hair doesn't turn white from stress, it just turns white because he accepts he's a ghoul. Now, I want you to answer me this question. Which scene do you think represents Kaneki having a mental breakdown as he is accepting he's no longer human? Is it A, mutilating his own face and being incredibly distraught, or B, him just calmly saying, I'm a ghoul, and shrugging it off and becoming some badass edgelord? That's right, that's right. A. B is not a good adaptation at all, and honestly, even though I thought it was cool when I first saw it, it holds no candle to the manga, as it genuinely shows the raw emotions and panic that Kaneki is going through. Now, this change in itself is bad, but it's not as bad as what they changed next, because instead of Kaneki going with these two characters called Banjo and Tsukiyama, he instead goes with the group that he's actually fighting the entirety of the manga, Aogiri Tree. This makes no sense for Kaneki's character, because Kaneki doesn't like Aogiri Tree, he doesn't like anybody in it. But for some reason in the anime, they want to make Kaneki look like this Sigma edgelord badass. And that's just not who his character is. Don't get me wrong, Kaneki has his cool moments where they actually do happen in the anime the same way they happen in the manga. But instead of having Kaneki have these moments with the group he's meant to go with, they have him have these moments, because that's so much cooler, that's so much more relatable, you know, when you just rip people apart for no reason and you're not even the right location and you genuinely just mess up the story for the sake of looking cool. That is cool, right? But this isn't the only thing they changed in Season 2. They completely skip arcs and they completely replace arcs with worse ones, only to try and come to the same conclusion because, well, if they didn't, then it wouldn't make any sense to follow up with Tokyo Ghoul Re. Personally, to me, I find this a massive shame, because not only is Kaneki a better character in the manga, I also think the arcs that they skipped out or replaced on genuinely hold so much more worth than the ones that they put in the anime. It just seems like a missed opportunity, as I feel the first 14 volumes were very, very close to being perfect. By close to being perfect, I mean I just wish they'd given a bit of the Black Dog and the Devil Ape a bit more of a setup, but other than that, I love the manga. I just, like I said, I wish they had more of a setup. For instance, one of the things that I think is perfect about Tokyo Ghoul is ghouls themselves, because the concept of ghouls is meant to represent how you don't actually know people as well as you think you do, because there is always a secret, there's always another piece to the puzzle. However, ghouls are just as human as, well, humans, because they're also just trying to live too. I mean, ghouls eat humans to survive, but humans kill ghouls to survive. It's an endless loop with no right or wrong. Obviously, there are good and bad ghouls, and there are good and bad humans, but that doesn't mean that the majority of them are bad, because in actual fact, if most of them didn't have to kill, then they wouldn't kill. And that is what makes the reader so invested, because you see the story from both sides, you understand both sides, and eventually you just want the fighting to stop and everybody to be happy because they're just making it worse for themselves. The end of Tokyo Ghoul leaves a lot of plot lines left open, and you're under the impression that the characters you come to know and love, such as Kaneki, are dead. It's the end of their story, but it's not the end of Tokyo Ghoul, because in the final page of Volume 14, it sets up the new protagonist, Haise Sasaki, and then it's on to Re. Tokyo Ghoul Re is the second part to Tokyo Ghoul, and personally the part that I preferred the most. Like I said, it follows Haise Sasaki, who is a ghoul investigator for the CCG that is in charge of the Quinx squad. Now, you might be thinking, who are the Quinx squad? Well, the Quinx squad are humans implanted with ghoul organs, but it's in a safer way so that they aren't as powerful, but in doing so they are technically still humans and can eat human foods. But I'll talk more about them later because there is something I want to talk about regarding them. Anyway, back to Haise. Like I said, he works for the CCG and he is in charge of the Quinx squad, but he also works closely with Arima, who happens to be his mentor. This is because he has no memories of his previous life, and Arima has built him up in hopes that he can help him fight ghouls. And Haise agrees so that one day, whilst fighting the ghouls, he can eventually unravel the secrets of his past and regain his past memories. Because of this, there is a complete shift in the point of view of the manga, because instead of following Kaneki, who is on the ghoul side, we are now following Haise, which is on the side of the humans and the CCG. This complete shift further emphasizes the point of the manga, and it shows that the endless cycle of violence is something that isn't justified, and something that they need to stop, because we can see from both sides now that none of them want to do the fighting in the first place. This shift is one of the many reasons why I genuinely prefer Tokyo Ghoul Re, because it just so easily emphasizes that message, the message that it took basically all of Tokyo Ghoul to kind of set the groundwork for. However, because we are from the point of view of the CCG, we also see that, like when we were looking from the Ghouls' point of view, that there are bad ghouls, there are bad humans too, namely this guy called Shiki Kijima, who likes to torture ghouls so that he can get what he wants, which is murder and torture of more ghouls. That is how easily the shift from Tokyo Ghoul to Tokyo Ghoul Re demonstrates that there are good and bad of each, with the majority being good, but the minority, the bad apples of the bunch, ruining it for them. Namely Jason, Shiki, you know, the list goes on. One of the other reasons why I genuinely prefer Tokyo Ghoul Re more than Tokyo Ghoul is Haise Sasaki. He's an amazing main character. In fact, he's one of the most flawed main characters I've ever seen, namely because he has no memories. And because he's the main character, the journey of him regaining his memories and finding out who he was tends to be the main focus for the first half of Tokyo Ghoul Re, and therefore it's in a lot of detail and something I want to talk about right now. To somewhat break it down, he is scared of his powers at the start of the series. He doesn't want to use them because he knows that he used to be a ghoul, and a powerful one at that. But one day, when he is on a scout mission to look for a returning character known as Torso with his team, he ends up getting into a fight with not Torso, but another ghoul, Orochi. Orochi was a powerful ghoul, so powerful in fact that it caused Haise to go past the limits he had set for his power and listen to the voice inside of his head. And it is at this moment that Haise tends to go insane and he has to be apprehended by the CCG as an S-level threat. And it is at this moment that when we see the voice inside of his head, the readers figure out who Haise is. It's Kaneki. However, it's not the Kaneki we know and love, it's actually Kaneki without memories, meaning it's our Kaneki, but at the same time, it's a completely new character. Once the CCG evaluate Haise and make sure he's okay to go back to his home, he goes back to what he perceives as his normal life. But when he is back there, he receives a gift in the mail from a secret admirer, and it happens to be a book with the name Ken Kaneki written on it, and on top of that, a mask with weird teeth and an eye patch on it. But the weirdest part about all of it is the fact that it fits him perfectly. So he does what any normal person would do, and he takes the Quinx squad on an adventure where they all get custom ghoul masks made, and they go to ghoul societies. But all the ghouls fear him because they think Eye Patch has returned. And that's what starts to lead him to think, okay, I was the Eye Patch in my past life. Haise then goes to the person he sees as his mother figure. He goes to Akira Mado. Now, he thinks she's going to give him some answers, but she doesn't want him to know who he was in his past life, because she doesn't tell him, but when he was a ghoul, he took part in the murder of her father. And therefore, if he regained his memories, he wouldn't be the person that she's grown to know and care for. Haise's final moments take place in the Tsukiyama family raid. And this is because he is fighting a 2-on-1 where he is fighting against Kane and the One-Eyed Owl. And in doing so, he's getting overpowered. So he has to go past his limits once again and listen to the voice in his head. But as he's listening to the voice in his head, he hears, "Don't let me die." He doesn't want to be forgotten. So he listens to the voice, he listens to Kaneki, and in doing so, to save both of them, Haise has to say goodbye. Haise's character arc is then finished, and we go back onto having Kaneki as our main character. But the reason I've talked about Haise so much is because I feel it further emphasizes the next form of Kaneki that we see. That form namely being Black Reaper Kaneki.
My favourite version of Kaneki, by the way.
This is Kaneki's most ruthless persona, and it happens to be when Kaneki is experiencing a cognitive dissonance. For any of you that do not know what the hell a cognitive dissonance is, it was first proposed by For any of you that have zero clue what a cognitive dissonance is, for those of you that have no idea what a cognitive dissonance is, it was first proposed by Festinger, who states that two people have two For those of you who have no clue what a cognitive dissonance is, it was first proposed by... I just can't get it out, I just can't get the words out. For those of you that have zero clue what a cognitive dissonance is, it was first proposed by Festinger, and he states that when two people have two convicting... For those of you that have no clue what a cognitive dissonance is, I'm going to explain it, but I've tried like 15 times now, and it's a tongue twister, and It's really annoying to remember, so I'm going to have my laptop right here and I'm going to read it out. It is proposed by Festinger that the cognitive dissonance theory asserts that people often have two conflicting or inconsistent cognitions. In this case, the persona of Haise and Kaneki, which produce a state of tension or discomfort, also known as a dissonance. People are then motivated to reduce the dissonance, often in the easiest manner possible. Becoming Black Reaper Kaneki was his attempt to reduce the dissonance, as he would not kill ghouls like Tsukiyama, and clearly loved certain ghouls when he clung to his life as an investigator, since he clearly had a place in the CCG. He had a mentor in Arima, and was a mentor to the Quinx squad, which shows a healthy and happy life, one that he didn't particularly have as Kaneki. He was happy as Haise, as he tells Arima, but he could not say the same about his life as Kaneki. Yet he could not deny that he indeed was Kaneki. The senseless slaughtering of ghouls was his attempt to solve the dissonance. He wanted to be Haise, which in the end did not work. However, the dissonance was solved by him realizing who he really was and what he really wanted. Now the laptop is going away. Black Reaper Kaneki, to get rid of this dissonance, uses his position as a CCG investigator in Haise, but also wants to save his friends and family from when he was Kaneki. So, therefore, he merges both, and he stages a massive-scale prison break to save Hinami from Cochlea, and he uses the help of Algiri Tree, because they've grown to love and appreciate Hinami as they've gotten closer to her over the past few years. Once Kaneki has freed Hinami, he plans to die at the hands of his mentor Arima, because he just wants to hold him off so that they can get away to safety. However, this is his plan until he sees Toka, who says she will see him later, and in doing so, he hallucinates Hide, and ends up realizing that even though Hide is dead and he thinks he's killed him, well, he wants to live, because he wants to put an end to the ceaseless fighting. He's human and ghoul. He's the only person that can stop this suffering. When Kaneki comes out of the hallucination and he realizes he wants to live, he tells Arima that he's not going to fight anymore. This then causes Arima to kill himself because he feels Kaneki is finally ready for what he trained him for whilst he was Haise. And Arima, in his final words, tells Kaneki his hopes, dreams, and aspirations. Tokyo Ghoul Re was always a weird name to me. I mean, every single time I picked up the book and started reading, I was just always wondering, what does Re even stand for? I mean, it could stand for redo, because Shuei Ishida is trying again, doing the series again. It could stand for reimagined, because it's something new, it's a continuation. Hell, it could even stand for redraw, because his art skills have gotten better, and he's got to be one of the best drawing mangaka out there. None of them were true, because as Arima has been defeated by Kaneki, he tells him to tell everybody that he was the one who killed Arima. He is the strongest ghoul, stronger than the strongest human. So, Kaneki agrees, and they have a heartfelt goodbye as Arima fades away, and Kaneki goes on to go meet up with Toka and everybody else. But on the way, he meets up with the one-eyed owl, and she tells him that her, the strongest ghoul in history, and him, the strongest human, have actually been working together behind the scenes the entire time, so that they can stop the senseless fighting between humans and ghouls. They did it all to create the one-eyed king. And it was at this moment that when I read it, I saw a black box with text in it at the bottom of the page. And it read, in multiple languages, including Maltese, ... And then I flipped the page, it said Re means king, while simultaneously saying that Kaneki is the one-eyed king. Do you not get what are you picking up what I'm putting down here? This was crazy. I genuinely jumped up the first time I read this like 3 years ago, because the entire time I had been reading Tokyo Ghoul Re, literally the first time I picked it up, the first time I bought a volume, because I was stupid and bought the volumes individually, it had been staring me in the face that Kaneki was the one-eyed king. Tokyo Ghoul King. That is the real name, if you want to be serious, if you want to, translate it. Tokyo Ghoul King. Everything just fit together. It was at that moment it solidified itself as not only my favorite out of the two, but also my favorite manga in general, because all the pieces fit together. the one-eyed owl, Arima. Who's going to be the one-eyed king? What does Ri mean? Everything went together at that one point. And it closed the book on Haise and opened the book back up on Kaneki. Anyway, that's enough about Kaneki because I now want to focus on the Quinx squad for a little bit. Like I said earlier, the Quinx squad are humans with ghoul organs transplanted into them, but in a safer way so that they are still technically human. But I want to focus on two specific ghouls, Kuki Urie and Toru Mutsuki. Starting off with Kuki Urie, who is the leader of the Quinx squad under Haise. He starts off incredibly pessimistic, with most times him not being drawn with a mouth, and instead us listening to his inner monologue where he belittles everything and everyone. As the story goes on, we see his progression and his growth as not only a character but also as a person, but that is what I find amazing about him, because he's not really drawn with a mouth 9 times out of 10, but by the end of the series, well, we do see him with mouths and he's a lot less, because he still is pessimistic. And it's one of the small details that you notice as you read Tokyo Ghoul and Tokyo Uri, one of the things that Sui Ishida loves planting in for very, very astute readers who will go back time and time again just to see what they missed. However, Urie tends to try and handle everything like Kaneki did on his own. He trains an abundant amount just so that he can defeat his enemies, and it is a complete parallel to what Kaneki was like in the first half of the series, because it shows that it's not only happening on the ghoul side for ghouls to protect ghouls, but it's also happening on the human side for humans to protect their fellow humans too. And it shows that the endless cycle of violence breeds these people who honestly would not have been like this if the fighting didn't start in the first place. And it's what Kaneki looks like from a third-person point of view, because I think that Urie is the side character version of Kaneki. But the same way with Kaneki, he actually becomes a lot more mature and well-rounded, and for Urie, because he was pessimistic, it actually makes him a lot more likable, and by the end of the series, I wasn't dreading reading what he was saying or thinking, to be more exact. I was actually just enjoying seeing him, and I was proud of the character development that I had witnessed. Next is Toru Mutsuki, but I don't want to talk about Mutsuki in the manga that much. I want to use this as another example of why the anime is dog shit. Mutsuki has to deal with the recurring character Torso that I spoke about earlier. Torso is there to be Mutsuki's antagonist. In the manga, Torso hunts Mutsuki for arcs upon arcs. It happens for actually the majority of the manga, until one day he finally captures her, and he mutilates her body and does some very, very disgusting things such as sexual assault. He cuts off her arms, her legs, just so that he has only a torso, because, I mean, hinted by the name, he likes torsos. And overall, it's a completely graphic and very emotional part in the manga, which causes Mutsuki to snap and massacre Torso back, in doing so making her go insane. What happens in the anime is different though, because it's not actually explicitly shown in the anime, it's just mentioned. And in doing so, the people who were watching the anime were incredibly confused when Mutsuki appeared and was completely insane, because it had been building up to her being insane for the entirety of the manga so far, but we never saw the snapping point, and therefore it completely ruined the character development, well, character de-development, because at the end of the day, nobody knew what was going on. And Mutsuki isn't the only example of this. Dragon Rize isn't in the anime, that we don't know Rize is alive, and we don't see Dragon Rize until the very end in the anime. Whereas in the manga, she was there from literally halfway through Tokyo Ghoul. It was something that confused me and everybody whilst watching, and it was very, very, very wrongly handled. All because the anime tried to get everything done in one season, so it cut out a bunch of arcs, when realistically the anime probably needed 2 seasons at least. I love Tokyo Ghoul and Tokyo Ghoul Re, and there is so much more that I want to talk about, and I might make further videos on it in the future, because if I wanted to talk about everything right now, I'd need to make 3 multiple hour-long videos. Overall, Sui Ishida shows that he knows how to write a deep and meaningful story with the piece of fiction that is Tokyo Ghoul. I first watched Tokyo Ghoul when I was 13, and I loved it. I mean, sure, it was kind of dark and edgy for the sake of being dark and edgy, but I love the fights, I love the music, I love the messed up story. So imagine my surprise when I went to go buy the manga and I started reading it and I instantly noticed that they had gotten the story correct and the characters were written correctly too. The Tokyo Ghoul anime was not handled well. It was low quality, didn't follow the source material, and Route 8, even though I think it's a smart name, how it plays off Algiri tree, with A being Algiri and the root being, you know, with a tree, it was a massive dumpster fire that had its own original story, only to force itself to have the same ending as the Tokyo Ghoul manga so that it could lead into Re, confusing a lot of fans and genuinely not making any sense. That being said, I don't think there will ever be a perfect Tokyo Ghoul anime adaptation, because the art that Sui Ishida draws, weekly by the way, shows just how crazy and actually talented he is as a mangaka, because his art and story are perfect, with very few other manga being able to hold a candle to it. Tokyo Ghoul stands out not only in its medium, but in art as a whole. It's an emotional roller coaster by Sui Ishida that opens the eyes of the reader to conflict and issues with an incredibly immersive world. It is a generational piece of fiction, one that I personally believe will go up with all the greats and should be read by everybody. And I mean everybody. So go read it now. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. Like I said, go read Tokyo Ghoul, go read Tokyo Ghoul, go read Chojin X. I would love for them to get anime adaptations, like another one for Tokyo Ghoul, or Chojin X to just get a anime adaptation is really amazing. But with that being said, thank you very much for watching. Like, subscribe. It's taken me 5 months to make this video, purely because I recorded the first half 5 months ago, but I've been really busy with college and work. So I didn't like the second half of the video, so I've just re-recorded it. But thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, you know, share this with your friends. I would love 1 million subscribers. I'd really enjoy it. So thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye.